Welcome to the Planning Committee. It's 2 o'clock and before us is our agenda. The first item, any apologies for absence? We've had one, I believe.
Yeah, from Councillor Anne Jeffrey, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 then, any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests? Are there any? None? No? Thank you. Item 3 is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record, and that's pages 1 to 3. So we're on page 1. Page 2. And page 3. If somebody moves, full record. Thank you. Sorry.
Can I make a statement, Chairman, as we speak? Can I say, on behalf of certainly of North Gower in particular, I often criticise the planners and the planners department quite often and all over. But can I say, on this occasion, it gives me great pleasure to say what a wonderful job they've done on Brandy House in North Gower. This is one which caused huge amounts of problems with the residents, the neighbours, and etc. And it was visually bad. I complained to Ian, and in fairness, he sent his officers down. I admire their courage in going down. I'll just say that because it reminded me when I was locked in once in a field in Gower with an old bus of us. But coming back to it, they have done a superb job. They took a long time. There was never a problem with that. And they took it. I asked him, do you think this will get through the hour? And no way at all. And I said, how about going to the Welsh Assembly? And he said, what we've done and the work we've done and the result coming back from the Welsh Assembly, everybody now in North Gower is sleeping well at night. It's a great tribute. And the officers, you know, the ones that you sent out on there, that they have done a wonderful job for the planning department. Often we criticise, but I have today, when you do a damn good job, and I tell you what, it was. I'm sure it was a wee bit scary. I won't go into that, but you've done a well job, and I think they should be well congratulated, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Noted. So item 4, any items for deferral or withdrawal?
No, Chair.
Aren't any there? Okay, so we move on to item 5, and that's the determination of planning applications under the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990. And the first item there we got is, you find it on page 7, is the application for what we would call Swansea Central. And David, is yours then?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. So we've got to take you through the presentation. So so this is Reserve Matters application relating to Swansea Central Block B plot DZ2B, as it originally was referred to, comprising mixed-use building, commercial units with offices and various public realm improvements and approval of details pursuant to the outline planning conditions. So Reserve Matters application submitted on behalf of the Council and Council joint venture partner, which is Urban Splash, as you're probably aware. And it follows on from the Section 73 permission, which we brought to committee in June, where we changed the parameters relating specifically to the land use from Block B from residential to offices, and also changed the maximum height parameter from 22 metres to 32 metres. So obviously that's allowed the Reserve Matters to be submitted and in accordance with the outline parameters. So essentially, the application seeks Reserve Matters approval for access, appearance, landscaping layout and scale. And so it's basically ground floor commercial use, and we'll go through the presentation with offices on the upper 4 floors. So it's essentially a 5-storey building with ground floor commercial and levels 1 to 4 for office use. So as you can see on the first slide, so basically the application site is the grass triangular area, which is in the middle of the site, which is bounded by St David's Church. You've got St Mary's Church to the top, the old part of St David's to the east, and then obviously to the west you can see the multi-storey car park, which is coming to completion. Residential block, you can see the bridge to the south, and then obviously the quadrant to the west. And the next slide, Ian, please. And then just, yeah, so that arrows it down slightly more detail. So obviously, basically, our application site, we'll put up the location plan in a minute, which is basically the green area, which as I outlined at the last committee in June, is temporary landscaping pending the redevelopment of this site and the forthcoming reserve matters application, which we are considering today. So obviously, the shape of the plot is dictated by the site. And if you go on to the next slide, Ian, so you can just see the red line area and the triangular plot, which in the middle of it. So obviously, yeah, so it's bang set central in the Swansea Central development. So this obviously is the next phase of development following on from the arena, the coastal park, the bridge, and the multi-story car park. And the next slide, Ian, please. Yeah, so it takes you into some slightly more detail, which obviously shows the footprint of the building. As you can see, it's a triangle block with the various public realm improvements around the block. Okay, so as I say, it's the building is designed with a high level of sustainability. It's designed to meet British Council for Offices BSCO requirements throughout, provide space requirements to maximize efficiencies while seeking to achieve good standards of well-being, levels of daylight, sunlight, generous floor-to-ceiling heights, and multi-tenant flexibility. And also will seek to deliver an excellent BREEAM standard of accommodation, and also aim to meet low energy transformation initiative, also referred to as the LETI standard for commercial offices, to help meet zero carbon targets. So the scheme has been subject to detailed plans and discussion between the plan officers, placemaking officers at the council, obviously regen officers, council leadership, as well as the design commission, and also was subject to pre-application consultation, which is summarised within the report. So, as I say, reserve matters applications, obviously the principle of development is established, but I won't reiterate the policy position, and basically we'll go through the design requirements. So, next slide, please, Ian. So you can see triangle plot. This is the ground floor. So obviously the turquoise green area, if you like, basically is the commercial element. Potentially subdivided to 2 units. So the blue area is the entrance, which is basically opposite the church hall. And then the sort of orangey bit is the back of house, and the white bits basically are the plant. Refuse storage, bike storage, etc. So it'll be basically single access point basically through the blue area for the offices above. Obviously, the commercial units will have their own entrances essentially, and obviously you can see the public realm outside, and that allows for, if it's, for example, if they were food and drink, cafe, restaurant type uses, allows for external seating as well. And the next slide, Ian, please. So yeah, there you can see a potential layout. So you've got 2 units there, the blue and the pink. And obviously you can see potential tenant arrangements relating to the internal layout. So you can see it's been tested to allow for back of house requirements and obviously seating, and you can see the outside seating as well. So proposals have been developed in line with the outline consented master plan parameter requirements. D-zone DZB allocates maximum height of 32 meters. So it's been designed with a plant height of 32 meters with a parapet height of 28.65 meters. And they're both in line with the consented outline master plan parameters. And again, the scale footprint in accordance with the parameters. So it's been designed, obviously, you've got a proposed wedge triangular shaped building footprint is due to the master plan layout effectively, and the designers responded accordingly to this development. So it's designed to be fully accessible, provide flexible building, suit the needs of future tenants, single point of entrance up to the upper floors. You've got cycle parking on the ground floor of the building. Use of cycles as a mobility aid is acknowledged and will be accommodated. Some cycle racks will be designed to accommodate trikes, and also with flexible arrangement based on need, with potential for EV charging points for bikes, mobility scooters, and electrical scooters as well. As I say, you got the white build sections are the back of house. So you got plant and the refuse. Basically, the delivery area will come along Rutland Place effectively. So that will allow for refuse vehicles, deliveries, and emergency access if there were ever was required to it. So next slide, please, Ian. So that's a typical floor plan of the upper floors, 1 to 4, essentially the same. So obviously the blue area essentially is obviously the open plan office space. And then you've got the central core area, which is the orangey color. Obviously that's the toilets and staircase, etc. And that replicates itself on the 4 floors. The next slide, Ian. So there you can see a potential layout. Obviously, it depends on tenant requirements in terms of how the seating arrangements, meeting space, breakout space, etc., will be accommodated, and that to some extent will dictate the final numbers in terms of how many people will be employed at the premises. Next slide, please, Ian. So there we go. That's the plant. So you can see the orangey bit is the plant. You can just see the PV in the next slide in as well, please. So the roof level, so you can see the PVs, and obviously the green areas are the green infrastructure, blue-green arrangement, which obviously is important for green infrastructure, meets the SAB standard, and there's a CDM roof as well. And obviously the PVs will go towards try and make the building as zero carbon as possible in terms of renewable energy. And the next slide, please, Ian. So this starts to show the detail of the external facade. So you can just about see some of the detail. You've got shop fronts, the ground floor, which would be fully glazed. And then you've got the mix of perforated cladding panels and full glazing panels. So obviously you'll have the slender louvered facades, which will hide mechanical ventilation behind the facade. You've got quite a pale cladding, which will obviously won't clash with the surrounding red brick and the stone of the historic assets in David's Church, St Mary's Church as well. And then obviously you've got expansive floor to ceiling heights. So if we go on to the next slides, and then obviously, there we go. So obviously, we've got a number of CGIs, which will take you through a number of different angles to view. Obviously, this one is looking south towards the bridge. Obviously, you've got the old St David's building on the left. You can just see that obviously it's got the triangle, it gives you an idea of the triangular shape of the building. And the future development on the right, you can just start to see the development on the coastal park, and you can obviously see the green infrastructure, ground floor, lots of public realm improvements, and then you can just see the idea of the perforated cladding interspaced with the glazing elements. And we go through the CGIs. Next slide, Ian, please. So yeah, so that's from the opposite direction. So obviously you can just see what you'll see. So obviously that's the facade as you walk north-south from the bridge, if you go walking from over the bridge and then towards St Mary's Square, St Mary's Church. And yeah, you can just see the shape of the building, and you can just get an idea of the cladding and the glazing elements with the breakout space from the commercial space at ground floor. And the next slide, please. Again, there's some close-ups of the ground floor, the entrances, and the building. And the next one. Again, so you've got different images from different viewpoints. So you can just see the high-quality design elements. And the next one. Again, from different viewpoints. And the next one. So yeah, so that gives you, that's this close-up of the shop front. So obviously that is the glazing element of one of the units. So obviously it's got active frontage at ground floor. And I mean, it would suit itself obviously to some kind of cafe, food and beverage type usage. And the next slide, please, Ian. And then it shows you from a different angle. You can just see the statue in the foreground of Henry Vivian. And the next one. Yes, I think this is the last one. So I put up the slides. Obviously, this is the landscaping effectively. So it picks up the landscape and green infrastructure on the roof, and obviously the extent of the green infrastructure of the public realm and its relationship to the north-south link walking from the bridge to northwards up towards the quadrant and St Mary's Church. So it's obviously entrance, obviously opposite the church hall, as they say, and you've got the sort of back of house on the Rutland Place elevation. So it's a high quality building, good quality of landscaping. Public realm will go towards meeting our SUD standards, and obviously will adherence to the council's green space factors tool as well. So lots of the compliance with outline planning conditions are outlined in the report. I'm not going to go through those. Just to add, obviously, there are further conditions recommended with regards external finishes, samples, building details, delivery management plan, the actual planting details of the landscaping, and the ecological measures. So it is recommended for approval with those additional conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. I got from the agents now. I got some speakers. If I got this right, David Warburton. All right. Alex, right? Yeah. So who wants to go first? And that's what I'm saying.
Shall I go
Okay.
first, Chair?
Oh,
So if I
you.
just thank you, Chair. So if I just introduce myself, I'm David Warburton. I'm Urban Splash's lead director for Swansea, and I'd just like to thank you first for the opportunity to be able to introduce the planning application today, and on what is the first phase of the Swansea Central scheme, our core and a truly core component in our wider regeneration plans for Swansea. So Urban Splash continues to feel immensely privileged to be working in such a great city and to be able to work on delivering buildings and places of the highest design quality with great environmental and sustainability credentials. So this new city centre hub building will help us both to forward plans across the Swansea Central project and the broader St David's area, and also will continue and help drive the great work the council has already done on transforming the city to date. And with that, Chair, if I may hand over to our lead architect, our lead designer for the hub building, Alex Flint.
Thank you, David. Yeah, that's very helpful. So yes, my name is Alex Flint. I'm a director at ShedKM Architects. We're based in Liverpool and London. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. I thought it was worth just having a bit of narrative from ourselves as the architects. It's quite helpful to have the architect in the room sometimes also to answer questions. So as we've said, Plot B will be a gateway to the Swansea Central Development Master Plan. There's been a lot of kind of extensive work done on analysis of that area, and indeed the consultation which we've undertaken over the last year, actually, with local community, the DCFW, with the local council and various other parties to get to what we feel is a suitable design for this site. And it's taken on the various different opinions and various different recommendations that we've been given by the various parties and bodies that we've consulted with. And on the slides or on the screen, which I'm kind of just going through in the background, a lot of which you've seen already, you can see here how the building has vastly developed from where it originally started as quite a solid red building, which was taken quite harshly, but then it moved on forward to that, to something much brighter, lighter, more modern and sophisticated. There's been a great deal of public consultation undertaken, and we went through an extensive process with the DCFW, whereby they made several recommendations, all of which were taken into account at the time of the design, and considerable changes were made to the design from the original design to the design that's presented to you today, including where the main entrance was, the central circulation core, the active frontages, the architecture, the style. The DCFW also went to say that they thought the building was very sophisticated and elegant once we had been through that process of change. So indeed getting their support as part of that design development. Moving on, and again, we've seen these plans from David's presentation, but we have really tried to do a 360-degree building here. So really active frontages, 80% of the ground floor is of active frontage, so glazing, office entrance, employment use, F&B, etc. Trying to provide sustainable future value to the area and this gateway site along Cupid Way. We do feel that office buildings often have to have back of house areas, but we try to reduce these as much as possible. And where there are things like cycle stores, they have windows to them. So again, they become active, they become a full functioning part of the building. And that retail F&B element to it that aligns Cupid Way, we've done a lot of research into how they could be set out. Again, you've seen this plan, but it's probably just worth noting that we've created bars, back of house areas, so that we know these will function, and we know that we'll be able to provide the maximum amount of frontage to Cupid Way without that being impinged by kitchens, extracts, and other facilities such as toilets. It's probably worth talking about the roof, which is a big element of it. And again, David mentioned this is a highly sustainable building. The LETI targets, again, as David mentioned, are a big part of this. The roof will be a blue-green roof, so it will retain water within it. It will also have an extensive green roof, because it's the only type of green roof you can use with this type of blue roof area. And that extensive green roof will bring along flora and fauna to the area and further habitat to the local vicinity. That has been coupled with some very sophisticated design elements and architecture, and of course, most importantly, the public realm which surrounds this, and creating a very, very robust route along Cupid Way with robust materials, all discussed and agreed with the local highway team in Swansea, alongside native species of trees and plants, also agreed with the various departments within Swansea's council. So something that's taken a lot of people, not just us, but a lot of people to get to this point to create what is a building that we feel is suitable for this site. And we've been through the townscape, so probably won't necessarily dwell on that a huge amount more, but we do feel that this will be a centrepiece, the regeneration of the Swansea Central Master Plan. It will show continued commitment by the council, by Urban Splash, by ourselves to this part of delivering high quality buildings and public spaces within Swansea Central. A robust demonstration of sustainable regeneration, we believe, and will encourage new operators and employment in that local area, which we feel will bring growth to that and unlock future opportunities further afield. So that's all, quite a kind of quick brushed version, but hopefully that's useful, and thank you for listening to me today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so a colleague wish to speak? No? All right, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you both for your presentations there. All right, moving on. Does anyone? Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting, I have to say. I like the idea of the bee bricks and the Swift bricks. I thought they were very good. But I have a question about the windows. And much of it is said in the report about natural light, which I agree with. But considering a lot of the windows are on the south and the west, how have you mitigated against, if we get a hot summer, the actual impact of people working in the offices? Because the last thing you want is all the blinds down when you've just gone to all the trouble of putting all the windows in. So is there some kind of, darkened glass there to take away the glare of the sun and obviously take away, unfortunately, some of the heat in the summer, not the winter?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The windows are triple glazed and they have a coating to the outer face which prevents glare and prevents overheating. And the building also is afforded openable windows. So although openable windows, we were doing those back in the 60s, we brought those back into office development so that the occupiers of the building can open the windows to cool themselves down rather than relying on hermetically sealed boxes with mechanical ventilation effectively. So the combination of those two things will stop the overheating, will stop the glare and make the comfortable workspace and environment for people to be in. And I think that element of user control is incredibly important these days, rather than just having a one-stop system that is out of their control. So being able to say, I'm hot, I'm going to go and open a window is actually a very simple thing that we all have in our homes, but actually something that offices aren't often afforded.
You Councillor Downing.
Thank you, Chair. I understand this is reserved matters, and more than likely I asked this question the last time. And if it's been answered, I apologise. And if it's in the report, I apologise as well. But it's on the Welsh water side of it, it is, when it says, we note the applicant is intended to connect surface water into the public sewerage system. Well, all other plans that come in front of us, it's the exact opposite we get. So is this now setting a precedent for larger developments that we will get later on?
I get the answer to that in a moment. Councillor Lewis?
Chairman, there is a car park belonging to the church. Say you want to get a hearse or into it, is it easy to get in?
Answers in a minute. Any other speakers? Mark?
I'd like to agree. It's a beautiful building. It certainly will enhance the look of the city centre. My only concern would be the loss of the green area, probably our last remaining green area, bang in the middle of Swansea, for picnics over the kids that run around. I suppose the only option to that, the only alternative would be Castle Gardens. I suppose for the green area. Apart from that, it's a staggering looking building. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's anyone else who wishes to speak, see if we've got any responses to those queries.
I think with regards to the drainage, I think there is a separate SAB application which is underway at the minute, which will obviously dictate the drainage arrangement. I don't know the detail of that as such, but obviously going into the existing drainage system obviously isn't the first option, I don't think. But obviously, I'm not quite sure if it's just related to the ground conditions at this location. So it has been agreed, as far as I'm aware, in terms of the drainage strategy anyway. So as far as the St. David's Church arrangement, I think that's all been agreed in conjunction with the church. So obviously this area doesn't impact necessarily the existing arrangements, and I think those arrangements were agreed prior to, I think, when the church hall was built. So I think that their existing logistics, how they drive around the building well, I think they've actually been stopped from driving around the building, but I think those arrangements are agreed with the church, I understand. So yeah. And with Councillor Tribe's remark about the green area, yeah, we went through this. It is a temporary landscaping area. It is, whilst it is quite a nice area, for it is meant to be temporary. It was always meant to be temporary. This is a development plot, as I say. So there is, as you mentioned, Castle Square. So obviously that scheme will get underway in the new year. So they'll enhance that existing arrangement. And as well as that, I know that we have started speaking to St. Mary's Church as well to improve their existing green area as well, which will enhance that overall public realm area. So as I say, part of the presentation did show public realm improvements. So obviously, whilst we are losing that temporary arrangement, hopefully with the additional tree planting and the rain gardens, etc., that will compensate to some extent. So.
Thank you. I've got no other hands up. No other member wish to speak? No, if that's the case, then we can move to a vote. And Gareth, when you're ready, please.
Councillor Meyerbaker.
For.
Peter Black. For. Phil Downing.
For.
Mary Jones.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis. Nicola Matthews.
For.
Mark Tribe.
For.
Mike White.
For.
Andrew Williams.
For.
And Paul Lloyd.
For.
That's 10 for 1 abstention, Chair.
So thank you very much. That is carried. And then we move on to the next item. Item 2, then you'll find on page 36 is off to Harlech Close. That's yours, Hayley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Prynawn da, good afternoon, members. There's no updates to report on this item. This application's been reported to Planning Committee for determination as the applicant is an employee of Swansea Council, so who is involved in giving advice to officers involved in the planning process. Next slide, please, Ian. The site is occupied by a 2-storey semi-detached property with front garden driveway, an existing rear garage and an elongated terraced garden which rises to the rear and is located within a predominantly residential area. The street scene is characterised by semi-detached properties of a comparable scale and appearance and is located within a cul-de-sac. Next slide, please, Ian. The aerial image identifies the application property and demonstrates the surrounding context in which the application sits. Next slide, please, Ian. Planning permission is sought for the replacement of a detached outbuilding for home office use within the rear garden. The proposed outbuilding is to replace the existing shed and will be single-storey and of a traditional pitched roof design, with a width of 2.8 metres and a length of 3.7 metres and a maximum height of 3.5 metres, and will comprise of a door, two front windows and 2 side windows. The outbuilding will be slightly raised on a concrete brick plinth and finished with grey box profile metal roof and timber cladding walls. Next slide, please, Ian. The submitted floor plan shows that the outbuilding will be used as a home office and shed in connection with the main dwelling house. Next slide, please, Ian. This block plan shows that the replacement outbuilding would be located next to the existing garage and positioned approximately 0.6 metres off the existing boundary fence with the neighbouring property, with the rear garden area remaining unaffected by the development. Next slide, please, Ian. The main issues to consider in the determination of the application therefore relate to the principle of the development, the impact of the proposed development upon visual and residential amenity, ecology and highway safety. In terms of the principle of the use, the proposed outbuilding is to be used as a home office, which is considered incidental to the residential use of the main dwelling house. And in terms of visual amenity, the proposed outbuilding forms a relatively modest single-storey unit in a traditional shed-style form with a pitched roof with windows and a door. The photographs on screen show the existing shed to be removed on site and the location of the proposed replacement outbuilding in relation to the existing garage on site and within the garden. Next slide, please, Ian. The proposed outbuilding would have some oblique views from public vantage points, given its raised position, but for the most part is shielded from view by the dwelling and the existing garage, as can be seen from the photograph on the left, which is taken from the main road. On that basis, the proposal is considered to have an acceptable impact on visual amenity of the site and the character of the local area. In terms of residential impact, the adjoining neighbours have been notified of the application, along with a site notice displayed at the address, and no comments or objections have been received to date. Whilst the scale of the proposal is modest, it is noted that the neighbouring property is at a lower level. The outbuilding would extend above the existing boundary fence. However, it's not considered this would be significant enough to have an unacceptable overbearing impact. Furthermore, it's not considered the proposal would have any unacceptable impacts with regard to harmful overlooking, overshadowing, nor noise and disturbance, given the distance away from the neighbour's property and the size and nature of the garden, as can be viewed from the photograph on the right taken from inside the neighbour's garden. The local authority's ecology has been consulted and has raised no objections, subject to standard advisory notes, and a condition will be attached to ensure that the proposed scheme of ecological enhancements is implemented in accordance with agreed details and timeframe. The proposal is not considered to impact the availability of on-site parking or the demand for spaces, and therefore highway safety is unaffected. So in conclusion, and having regard to all material planning considerations, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions set out in the officer's report within the agenda pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Hayley. Any member wish to speak? No? Oh. Yeah, sure. No one here. Okay. We can see the recommendation there is to approve the application, so we can take a vote on that now, and please, Gareth.
Councillor Baker. Peter Black. For. Phil Downing. For. Mary Jones.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis. Nicola Matthews.
For.
Mark Tribe.
For.
Mike White. For. Andrew Williams.
For.
And Paul Lloyd.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you so much. And then the coming up next then is agenda item 6, and that's back to Brithwin Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's no update or visual presentation for this item. This item is reported to committee as it relates to a request to modify the requirements of a legal agreement associated with a planning application for outline consent for residential development of land at Brithwin Road, Wynarloedd, which met the committee threshold. Reserve Matters application was granted in March 2019 for 36 residential dwellings and associated works, and the development has commenced on site and is at an early stage with the groundworks being undertaken. Due to the remit and nature of this item, the merits of the entire scheme is not being revisited. However, the original committee report has been reproduced as an appendix to this item for context within the agenda pack. So this item is seeking a technical modification to the legal agreement associated with the original application. In this regard, to amend the affordable housing requirement for the site from shall comprise 15% to shall comprise not less than 15%, and to insert a mortgage in possession clause. The wording of the Section 106 agreement is to be amended to reflect this, and this has been agreed with Swansea Council's Housing Enable Officer. The other change is to insert a mortgage in possession clause, but this is only to apply to social rented properties. This clause allows for a lender who has repossessed the property to operate free of restriction which are placed upon the individual properties. Essentially, a MIP occurs when a borrower defaults on their repayments and the lender subsequently takes possession of and sells the property. However, this is a very rare occurrence with registered social landlords, as Welsh Government would intervene to avoid any loss of affordable housing stock. So no other changes are required to the legal agreement or to the heads of terms that was established by the original scheme. Those details include in the planning history of the site. Comments made by the Council's Housing Enable Officer and the Legal Officer has been included in the item before you, and therefore the recommendation is to approve the modification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any member wish to speak? Councillor White.
Yeah, could I ask in relation to the 106? Is the highways officer mainly possible? Is the £10,000 for the road issue works adequate since it was brought forward in 2018, now in 2024? Do you feel that the 10,000 sum is actually sufficient to carry out the work that's actually required?
It's linked to the indexation, Councillor, so it would, increase in value if that was the case. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No, another member? Oh, Councillor Tribe.
Hi, just a query. Do we have any comments from the local council or councillors about this development?
Been invited to the meeting, so yeah. Okay, nobody else wishes to speak. Okay, right. Okay, well, the recommendation there is you can see that on page 49, but it's as Hayley's outlined there. Yeah. So, members, we will take a vote on the recommendations there. Yeah, on page 49.
Councillor Meyer Baker.
For.
Peter Black.
For.
Phil Downing.
For.
Mary Jones.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis.
For.
Nicola Matthews.
For.
Mark Tribe.
For.
Mike White. For. Andrew Williams.
For.
Paul Lloyd.
And for.
That's unanimous again, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's carried.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have before them the annual performance report, which is a mechanism for monitoring local planning authority performance used by Welsh Government. The report provides an overview of performance over the 23-24 financial year. Where comparative data is available, it's been included in the report, although in previous years we have had more data from Welsh Government to be able to use to compare with other authorities. I won't go through the report in too much detail. I'll just highlight a few of the key issues as I see them, but if members have any queries, by all means, I can answer any queries at the end. In terms of planning applications, you'll note that 96% of applications were determined within agreed timescales, the second highest in Wales of local authorities, and 74% of applications were determined within the statutory 8-week period, which is the best in Wales. Where applications end up in appeals, there were 106 appeal decisions last year. Of those, 82% of cases, the appeal decision supported the authority's initial decision. That's compared to 66% in the previous year and well above the Welsh Government's target of 66%. In terms of enforcement, we resolved 303 cases over the year. That's up from 253 in the previous year. But we are receiving more complaints than we're resolving in the year, which inevitably increases the amount of outstanding cases we're still looking at. There's a section on Section 106 agreements in the report. You'll note that 17 planning permissions were granted over the year with Section 106 agreements. Some of those were deed of variations because schemes were amended, but the terms of the agreement were still set out. Those agreements secured 98 affordable houses and £70,000 in contributions for infrastructure improvements. As you'll be aware, the trigger points for Section 106 agreements will vary. So a planning permission could be granted in 1 year, but the requirements of the 106 agreement may take several years to come forward. So there is a section that highlights what was actually achieved over the year in question. So 188 affordable houses were built during 23-24 on financial contributions of 2.243 million were received by the council towards infrastructure improvements. Again, the trigger points and the time that those infrastructure improvements will take place will vary, but we did transfer 1.5 million to other departments for use in the projects identified as part of the Section 106 agreements. As well as those issues, there are a couple of pressures I outlined in the report which the department are facing. The most significant one, I think, is the planning application fee income. That hasn't reached the target for the year. And I think the main reason for that is that there have been less applications submitted, so inevitably a drop in fees. And also the type of application submitted means that fees are generally lower. So we haven't had the high value applications submitted. The other thing to consider is that there's been no increase in fees since 2020 by Welsh Government. So our costs have increased, but we've had no opportunity to increase income to meet those costs. There is a consultation, we believe, to start imminently on fee increases, and hopefully that will help in moving forward. In terms of staffing, you may recall from previous reports, we did have 2 posts, senior planning officer posts, funded from planning performance agreement monies. They were temporary contracts because obviously funded by external money. Unfortunately, the PPA money wasn't there to renew those contracts at the end of 23-24. In fact, 1.5 of those posts were vacated during the year and not filled because there was, as those posts became vacant, we knew we weren't going to be able to renew them in April. The remaining half post contract coming to an end at the end of the financial year. And there has also been some staff sickness in the department, and that's put pressure on resources because of the long-term absence of officers in certain posts. But generally, I think comparing our performance to other authorities, we've maintained certainly in planning applications performance, and in meetings I attend with other authorities, I think we are doing as well as most authorities in Wales in terms of the way we're dealing with all issues associated with development management. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report, Ian. And you have the cabinet member responsible here for planning. Councillor Hopkins did.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair. I just want to put on record my thanks to the Planning Committee and planning officers, particularly for the hard work they've done over the last 12 months. To be in the top quarter of Wales within the planning department fills me with some great pride, to be honest with you. And I think, if you look at the ambitious plans we got as a city, and certainly in the placemaking charter that we put in, and I think we're very, very fortunate in Swansea. So for me, it's thank you for all the hours you spent in committee, for all the hours you've spent on site visits, and to be honest with you, and I think that enforcement is a huge part of it as well. So I'd like to also put my thanks on to the planning officers and enforcement officers that work tirelessly to ensure we get value added to our planning. And I think our city is at a crucial point, and I think you need to be very proud of your input to that. So from me to you, thank you very much for all the hard work you do.
And thank you so much for that as well. Did any other member wish to comment? Councillor White.
Thanks, Chair. Can I raise point 3.4 around the issue with enforcement? Have we got a matrix or records of all of our outstanding enforcement cases? And also, is there a time period where these should be concluded by?
Councillor Black.
Yeah, just following off, and I think it would be useful to have an oversight of the enforcement. I think
important as these statistics are in terms of dealing with applications, if you don't have a sufficiently staffed enforcement section, then people do get away with murder for a considerable amount of time. So we really need to make sure, and I'm directing this to David as the cabinet member, we really need to make sure that the enforcement section is properly staffed and resourced to do the job it's meant to do, and we don't spend too long chasing enforcement when we shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Anyone else? No? Sure. Go on.
So in response to Councillor White, yes, we have lists of all enforcement cases that are still outstanding. Officers of their own workload, and they're regularly reviewed with team leaders. There are time limits on enforcement action, and it depends on the type of breach as to how long you have to take enforcement action. So it's either 4 years or 10 years, depending on the breach. But once an enforcement notice is served, that process is stopped in a way. So we've served the notice, so they can't claim immunity. So if we've served enforcement notices, you know, that process of compliance continues. So there's no immunity in that sense. There's several reasons why it takes time. Councillor Lewis mentioned an appeal we've recently had through in Gower, and we served a notice a couple of years ago. But because the appeal process was taking place, and I understand Welsh Government have limited inspectors who are able to deal with enforcement matters, it takes a while to get through the appeal process. You rely on people to comply with enforcement notices, and if they don't comply, you have to go to court, and there's a lengthy process associated with that. Sometimes people will make planning applications, and that has to go through the process. So there's a number of reasons why things can take a while. But you know, in terms of Councillor Black's point, obviously resources are focused on generally enforcement or planning applications, but we have had to use some enforcement officers to pick up planning applications at times because of resource pressures there. So obviously budgets are difficult, but you know, I'd always welcome more resources if they were available.
Go. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that report. And then on to item agenda 8 then is the LDP monitoring report, and that's yours, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and Panamda, good afternoon all. Before you have a report on the LDP annual monitoring report. I often feel a little bit sympathetic to you at this time of year, committee, because when I do present the report on the AMR, you have in front of you well, quite a sizable bundle there, because of the nature of the annual monitoring report is substantive, and the nature of the work that goes into it is very, very significant, and the result is a document that's in excess of 200 pages. This is a sort of statutory an important part of the LDP process. We're coming up for 6 years now since the current LDP was adopted, and these annual monitoring reports are done every year, published at this time of year, and you've often had me before you giving an update on how the plan is being implemented. And as I say, it takes an awful lot of work to monitor the planning applications against all the policies and the objectives of the plan, to see whether or not it's performing and in what areas it needs to change. Now, the significant factor really in the latest AMR and the AMR that was presented to you last year was that we have now, as a council, embarked on a new plan making process, and really we know which parts of the existing plan need to be reviewed, and that process is ongoing as part of the new replacement LDP coming forward, and you'll hear more about that as we go into the next few months, indeed into the next couple of years, as the detail of that comes forward. But this process of reviewing the existing plan has been necessary to do for that reporting back to Welsh Government, but also as an informative to the replacement plan. So the recommendation on the report is to approve this for submission to Welsh Government. I think it's useful just to take you very briefly, really, just through some of the headlinements of the plan, because, as I say, it's a very detailed report, but we've drawn out in the covering report some of the key elements to that. And if it's okay, what I'd like to do is to bring in the lead officer who leads the team working on planning delivery, planning monitoring work, David Rees, and he will highlight aspects of the covering report that draws out some of those salient elements.
Thank
David,
you, Tom.
thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. As Tom said, I've not prepared PowerPoint slides really because there's 250 pages of charts and tables in the report. So just proposing really to take you through the covering report and just sort of summarize what each section is about. So section 1 is very much just set in the background. This is the 5th annual monitoring report that we've prepared on the LDP since 2019. It covers the period April 2023 to the end of March 24. And we're required to do these reports annually by Welsh Government to check on the delivery of the plans, policies and allocations, and just to monitor for any issues that might be arising in the implementation of the policies. And as Tom said, then there's quite a chunk in section 1 on the fact that we have embarked on a review of the LDP. AMR 3 2 years ago identified that a statutory 4-year period review was required of the plan, and identified that most parts of the plan were working well and were showing as green indicators, but there were certain parts of the plan that needed review just because of the amount of time that's passed since the plan was adopted, and some sort of key indicators on the delivery of sites which just needed to be updated, really. So section 2 of the report just really summarizes how we monitor the plan. There were over 100 indicators agreed with Welsh Government and the Planning Inspectorate when the plan was adopted, and there have been a few more added since by the new development plans manual that Welsh Government have published. Section 3 just sets out that we've done all the usual engagement as part of this work, particularly on the delivery of sites. We're very much in close contact with all the site promoters of each individual site, and we've also engaged directly with the Home Builders Federation just to reach consensus on the schedule of forecasts of when we see the housing sites coming forward in the future, which is in the appendix. So section 4 really goes into the main findings of the AMR report, and as Tom said, it's very much similar findings to the last 2 AMRs, following on from AMR 3, which identified certain indicators that weren't working properly, and it's very much the same ones. Overwhelming majority of indicators are still green, showing that the plan is working well, but the same indicators in terms of seeing time lags on some of the very complex housing sites that we're trying to deliver, which have seen issues arising firstly from COVID and then the unstable economic climate, particularly with the Ukraine war and other things, cost of materials rising, a lot of national new regulations and legislation on biodiversity and SUDs, for example, just added complexity to these large sites, taking time for them to come forward. There's a need for some policies in the plan to be updated. For example, the flood risk policy, we're waiting on new national guidance on flood risk, and then that will need to be interpreted through the local development plan update. Just from the amount of time that's passed since the LDP was adopted, we need to review the viability evidence and how that will allow infrastructure to be provided as part of development sites. And of course, we need to update just how much housing and employment land does the plan need to provide for, based on changes in the population forecasts and the economic forecasts. So overall, the AMR 5 concludes that LDP2 still provides a very sound basis. There are some things that need to be reviewed, and the new plan process of preparing LDP2 provides the means and opportunity to do that. And this is very much a lot of the issues that are being raised in AMR are being faced by other LPAs in Wales too. So we've seen some time lags on the delivery of sites, but the AMR also sets out some very positive findings. The 3 of the strategic sites are really starting to get close or actually underway. Parkmore and Pentlegare, at the time of reporting, 77 dwellings would be built there, and that's probably jumped up nearer to 100 now, I would have thought. Garden Village has commenced on site, and they're due to see occupations in the new year. And the Llangefell strategic site, we're expecting to see start properly in early 2025 too. So now that these sites are starting to deliver, as has been reported in other AMRs, such as from Cardiff Council, where they've got similar or even larger sites, they've seen a real uptick in the scale and pace of housing delivery once those sites get going. So the conclusions of the AMR really are to continue monitoring, as we have to do for Welsh Government, even though we're preparing the new plan. It's very much useful doing this work because it provides the evidence base for the next plan. We'll continue working with developers on the sites that we've got planning applications in for and the ones that we're trying to get to that stage. And the ultimate conclusion really is we're seeking authorisation from yourselves to submit this report to Welsh Government, as we need to do at this time of year, and to publish it on our website. So that's it from me really in terms of presenting the findings, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, David. Do you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll just say very quickly to finish that I did refer to the replacement plan, LDP2, earlier on, and this, we are moving towards a position of having a new plan published, and the first version of that would be what's known as the pre-deposit plan, the preferred strategy, and members as part of the whole of the council then will get an opportunity to see that and to discuss it, debate it, and agree it for consultation early in the new year. So that's just an update for members to be aware of that.
Okay, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, David. Any queries, questions from members?
Just to be consistent, Chair, same questions more likely every year. On page 60, 3.37, when it says site A, it does say 486 homes during the planned period incorporated in primary school, leisure and recreation facilities, public open space. All that is in the LGP. But there's also a spine road in the LGP, which is my view important, and that's not in there. So why isn't it in there? First question. And then when you get to the last paragraph, it says, all matters aside, from the main points of access are reserved for subsequent approval. Should that not be approval or refusal? Because it goes on to say, and then the applications are not yet determined. So should that be that? I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking you. And then again, the same question, when you go to the pages on SDA, BC, it's got trigger point 1 planning application permitted, not in accordance with the site policy and master plan, unless exceptions are justified by evidence. I forgot what you said last year. Does that mean that whatever we put in, we can throw out because it says we can go one planning application, that we can do whatever we want? Within planning laws, obviously.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the main concern in this report is the amount of red against housing completions.
There's quite a lot there, which seems to be well behind schedule. I don't take all the point about complexity. I'm just wondering, is that the only thing that's wrong? Is there an issue with? Is it the economy? Is it that we got them in the wrong place? What can we do to try to address that particular issue? Because given the current situation with housing and the demand for housing in the area, we have to get these completions up and running as soon as possible.
Yeah, thanks for both questions there. If it's okay, I'll deal with that issue first of all in terms of the wider spread of housing sites that we've got and the issues of delivery on quite a range in terms of whether they're of a strategic scale and complexity or the smaller sites. And you're right, that is the dominant sort of theme of the red flags then that have been highlighted in terms of the existing plan. And it is important to say that it's not a Swansea issue. It has been experienced across the country, but we mustn't rest on our laurels on that, and we must make sure that the sites that are going to be taken in to the replacement plan continue to be the most appropriate and the most deliverable. And that will mean a level of analysis of things like their financial viability, things like the extent of development requirements that are needed to bring them forward, and whether or not they are still aligned to the national policy requirement and all the new objectives that we will be setting out in what I mentioned earlier in terms of the pre-deposit plan, the preferred strategy. Now that will contain quite a range of objectives, some strategic policies, a placemaking strategy fundamentally, which will set up the principles of what the plan will be all about, and those sites need to accord with that to be taken forward. Unless they are commitments that have already got those sort of signed 106s, and then they are sort of in effect banked as part of the land bank. But it is an important point, and just to give assurance really that it's an issue that we'll be doing at a local level in terms of the level of detailed analysis we do on individual sites for our plan, but it's also being discussed much more in the round across Wales as well. In my role as chair of the Planning Officers Society Wales, then it is a standing item on whenever we meet the delivery of residential sites across Wales, and what are the consistent constraints to delivery, and what are the factors that are affecting non-delivery. And one of the biggest answers to that and issues to resolve is the way in which planning departments have to interface across all sorts of other disciplines increasingly, because of competing sort of and overlapping legislation, and that is a very common theme. And the other thing really to emphasise that we often talk about is how the only way we solve it is with close working with the private sector as well, and with developers. We have to find the solutions to these sites together, such that we ultimately have developers on site bringing forward places that we're going to be proud to see complete, in terms of new places that are emerging in Swansea, but also that can make viable returns for developers, and that they are going to give them enough incentive to actually get on site and do them as well, rather than do their business elsewhere in the country. So that's a response to that question. On the site specifics, Councillor, you highlighted in terms of
Yeah, I quite agree with what Peter says, that it does take a long time. But is there something that we can do to put pressure? Because when we go to consultation, there's no time limit when they come back to us. you know, like Welsh Water and people like that, and that holds up the planning application as well. So is there some way we can speed that process up? Not us particularly, but whether the Welsh Government can put pressure on them to respond sooner.
Well, you know, it depends who you're talking about as consultees. Really, we've got obviously internal departments, we've got external agencies, and it depends how fundamental that response is to the application. Ultimately, we need to be making decisions based on the important technical advice. So that there are some agencies that you know, that it is going to be a requirement to have some level of response and understanding of points of detail. We can always make judgment calls as a planning authority, as a council, as a committee. You can, so on the advice that we give, highlighting where there hasn't been responses on consultations. But I think it's, you know, it very much depends on the nature of the issue and the importance of the issue. You know, for example, at the extreme end of things, whether there's safety concerns, we need to have that sort of advice back.
On that point, Chair, I mean, the UK government are doing a review of what the process of housing, but they've got those targets that applies to England. And this one, I assume the Welsh government will be keeping an eye on that and looking at what could be brought into Wales on that. I'm a bit worried that it might take some democratic processes away from the councils, but I think it's important that if England managed to streamline the process in a way which is acceptable, that Welsh government pick that up as well.
Yeah, and this is a really interesting area, actually, in terms of ongoing debates within the you know, the planning industry and amongst planners at local government and national government across the world. I mean, up to Welsh government, you know, given its devolved nature, because we're actually working again, you know, as I referred to POSU earlier, Planning Officers Society Wales. We're working increasingly closely with the Royal Town Planning Institute and Welsh Government on some of these fundamental issues. The one about delivery that we talked about is the one about resourcing and the fees that you know, Ian had highlighted in terms of the impact that has had in terms of delivery of a service. And you know, not having the requisite increase in fees to be able to staff properly, and they recognise it. We talk with them on that, but also in terms of the whole process itself. And it's one of the advantages we've got in terms of us being a, you know, country of the size we are, and the number of personnel involved in terms of being able to make these decisions and refer up to members at local government and members of the Senedd and so on to be able to get a grip of what are the you know, the issues we need to resolve here, and what's the legislation that might need to be changed, and let's get that done. So yeah, you know, we're always open to hear. It's useful to hear those observations now and to ever have them in writing, because these the messages can be put into exactly those discussions that are had on a regular basis. In terms of the site specifics that Councillor Down you brought up, I do wonder whether a written response would be most useful for you, drawing out just because you're referring to the specific requirements there on that site, and I'm happy to provide that to you. And on the specific point of the should it say subject to approval or refusal, I think it is, you know, that there's no sort of insinuation that it is one of those terms of reference we use, as in subject to future determination.
Oh my God.
Oh, Tom, pleased to see you. In the included sites, a lot of work has gone on to put them into this plan, the pre-deposit plan, which you to put in early next year. Do you envisage any impact from the new TAN 15 regulations going to be implemented by Welsh Government, and what effect will this have on the already included sites?
Yeah, it's another great question, and it brings in again another key theme that we are discussing across local government and national government in terms of this flood risk policy. It is a very frustrating situation for all of us, for yourselves, and on the committee, for us as officers, in not having clarity on what this new policy is going to say specifically, when the new version is going to land and how it's going to relate to the mapping that is out there, continues to be out there, the flood map for planning, reviewed twice a year. The latest review, in fact, is this month. So we need to check the maps to see if there is any change, because there's an ongoing process of challenges that goes in to government on the quality and the accuracy of that mapping. Anyone's able to make those kind of challenges. So the mapping is there, but the associated policy is not. As you know, it's the TAN that's been in place for a long time. So there's a mismatch there with a different set of maps. So we push very strongly for clarity on when that's going to be issued. Refer again to the sort of lobbying we do through POSU, and there's letters been issued in recent weeks to the minister, new minister responsible for planning, seeking an update on that and seeking clarity on it. But certainly when there is, it's something that will be communicated to members. And in terms of what effect it might have on the plan, we are looking at what the flood map for planning indicates in terms of changes to designations, flood risk designations, and how that might affect some of the sites. The issue being, we haven't got the wording of the policy that goes with it in terms of understanding what are the implications of that. There is likely to take a bit of a precautionary approach on that, and where there are areas affected by potential flooding, we need to make some judgments on what we think that is likely to mean in terms of the wording. But yeah, it's something that we need to cover off depending on what we know when at that time, early in the new year, when you're presented with the pre-deposit plan. Will hopefully there might be an update by then.
Sorry, Chair, just for clarification, when you give a written response, Tom, will you have in the trigger point as well?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Just pick up on a point Councillor Downey made about consultees. There is a requirement for specialist consultees to produce an annual report indicating how long they take to respond to consultations, and that gets sent into Welsh Government. Now, I haven't personally seen Welsh Government's response to that, but there is a requirement to do it. And I am in the moment in the process of meeting with several specialist consultees, and one of the issues we are raising with them is the speed of response. So hopefully that will help to address it. But on some of the larger sites, you often get a response, but that requires amendments and further responses. And when you're trying to deliver the large sites, it takes time because you're trying to resolve these issues.
All right, I've got no other member wishing to speak. Then you can see on page 108 the recommendations. There are 3. So we can hopefully we will now take a vote on that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Gareth.
Councillor Mike Baker. Peter Black.
4.
Phil Downing.
4.
Mike Lewis.
4.
Richard, no, he's gone. Nicola Matthews.
4.
Mark Tribe.
4.
Mike White. 4. Andrew Williams. 4. And Paul Lloyd.
4.
That's unanimous. Chair 9-4.
Thank you very much. See you soon. Yeah.
Thank you.